This is the Voice for Real Estate podcast. Whether you're buying a home, building a home, or designing a home, you'll meet the local experts who can provide all the information you need in every episode of Voice for Real Estate. And be sure to subscribe, share, and comment so you don't miss a single episode of Voice for Real Estate.
Well, here we are with another episode of Voice for Real Estate, and I'm excited to be interviewing Sam Sherman, and he and his family own SIG, which is Schirmer Insurance Group. And you're also a nationwide, are you not, Sam?
Yes, sir. Been a nationwide agent since 1983.
You guys are a family-owned business.
We started in the insurance business. My wife's grandfather was a nationwide agent back in the 1950s in Greenville. And I started in the insurance business in 1983, following in his footsteps, which is my wife's grandfather, not my father or grandfather. My family was in the shrimping business. We had shrimp boats. And in the heyday of the Shem Creek, my father had 4 boats, the Sammy J, the Miss Charleston, the Hag, and a couple of steel hull boats that we did sword fishing with.
When you told your dad that you wanted to pursue this opportunity insurance, what was his comment to you?
He had a slight heart attack. He was in the hospital bed. I had an opportunity to go into the insurance business, didn't know a thing about the insurance business. And I went to him and I said, hey, I got this opportunity to go with this company called Nationwide. What do you think? I could come help you and run the shrimp boats. And he said, son, get out of the business. The shrimping industry is a dying business. And that was in 1983. I still hope those boys are doing okay with it, but it's been a tough road for them, I know.
And when you were a young man, you thought that's what you were going to do, didn't you?
Absolutely. Took welding in high school. Going to be a welding and weld and do work on boats and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's what I thought I was going to do for sure.
Your agency, SIG, is truly run by the family. From talking to your team, Grayson, your daughter, and Sass, and of course Gina, who oversees everything. The other people in the agency, the team, they feel like family too, Sam. You think they feel that way because you guys treat them that way?
Yes, sir. We are very, very team oriented. Everybody works together. We had a situation last month where we lost a carrier, and we had lots of clients to move to different companies, and we had to do it on a time frame. And everybody jumped in and split up the portfolio and worked, from early morning until late evening, trying to get it all done and take care of the clients as fast as we could because there was a time limit. And we do a lot of things together. We do outside events with realtors. We do outside events with Camp Rise Above. We're very involved with Camp Rise Above here locally. And we usually spend about a week with their camp. All of the staff members go and spend time there and help. Everything
flows from the top down. And the fact that you treat your team the way you do and you got family there, I think it flows over to the customers. I mean, that's why the customers feel the way they do,
Yeah, yes, sir. I agree 100%.
I'd like the listeners and the viewers to know that I've trusted you personally with some of my policies. I have a commercial building, residential buildings that you cover. And I got to say, Sam, y'all have saved me money. I can remember at closing where you said, Bill, just don't say anything. And I didn't say anything, and it saved me money. I appreciate what you've done for me. Choosing a provider for a carrier, that's got to be the first start. What determines whether you're going to bring one on or not?
Thanks for saying that. The carrier is very important. There's lots of, when I say a provider or a carrier, that's the company that provides the insurance. There's a lot of them out there. Some don't operate in certain areas. We're along the coast, so the coastal problem with hurricanes and all, some carriers shy away. But we always want to make sure that we're using an A-rated carrier or better. A B-rated carrier, we don't even write. That's just a big no-no. We don't deal with them. We don't have any in our portfolio. If a carrier gets downgraded, then we move the client immediately. You also, here along the coast, you have admitted and non-admitted carriers, and we make sure that we're using admitted carriers unless some circumstance with your particular house or situation.
What does that mean, Sam? Admitted and non-admitted. What does that mean?
Yes, an admitted carrier is your State Farm, Nationwide, Allstates, the ones that you know and hear and see on television, and then and they are backed by the South Carolina Guarantee Fund. So if a company ever was to go belly up, you would want to be with an admitted carrier because the non-admitted carrier is not backed by the South Carolina Guarantee Fund. So admitted is backed, non-admitted is not backed, and that's come into play here in the last couple of months. And some of my clients were very fortunate that we had them with the admitted carriers and not a non-admitted carrier.
I know you have been blessed over the years. You guys live on an island, Sullivan's Island. When somebody is purchasing a home along the Carolina coast, whether it's Pawleys Island, Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island, what is the most important thing that homeowner needs to do when it comes to picking the right insurance when they're buying their home? What do they need to do?
There's a couple of things there. One of them is that with the high cost to rebuild these days, getting the proper insurance value on your home is very, very important. I can remember right after Hugo, I was quoted $80 a square foot, and I said, there's no way. Then we got into the 200 square foot, and now we're getting up into the threes. And then depending on the size of a house, I've had some clients come in and say 600 a square. It's very expensive to rebuild. You've got to make sure that you have that right. You also want to make sure that the wind and hail is included in the policy that you're being quoted. There's one company that will write the home but won't write the wind. So you've got to be careful that you're not getting the cheap price and it doesn't have any wind coverage in it. And then make sure you're buying locally. I think I can speak for most all of the insurance agents here in Mount Pleasant that because of where we live, it is very important that you buy locally and have a local insurance man.
I agree with that. I definitely, it's always pays to buy local, but I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've called up one of your support team and, hey, I hate to bug you, but I need this, or can you help me with that? And you guys really are right on it.
Yes,
sometimes you hear about companies pulling out of South Carolina. Does it ever get to the point where an island homeowner might not be able to purchase insurance? What can they do then, Sam? What's your choices?
We do have a situation going on right now in the marketplace. We call it a hard market. A lot of carriers are backing away from the coast. I don't think we'll get to a point of it won't be available. As it becomes less available, usually the rates increase, so you can get it done. But there are a lot of carriers withdrawing from the marketplace, and the number of carriers and markets that we go to are getting smaller by the day. That's just the marketplace that we're in right now. And usually when that happens, premiums are going up. I know our gas prices and all other things, groceries and all are going up. Insurance is going up too, especially as these carriers withdraw from the marketplace. Availability is still here. We still have numerous carriers to go to, depending on your situation. There's always a market of last resort, they call it, and that's the South Carolina Wind and Hail Association. They write wind only, so you would buy a homeowner's policy without wind and buy a South Carolina Wind and Hail Association policy. That's a state legislature designated entity, and it's not going anywhere. It'll be around, but we don't go there unless we have to.
How long has that been an option for homeowners? Since it's legislation, that means it has to be voted in. How long has that been going on?
Yeah, about 72, 73, somewhere in there, they established that. Prior to that, nobody wanted to write anything over on the islands. But then mortgages started being available. Insurance was available through the wind pool. And then in the early 2000s, we had a market homeowners crisis, and we wrote a lot with the South Carolina wind pool. At that time, 2007, more carriers came in, so there's not as many people with the South Carolina wind pool, but that is an option, but it is very pricey.
When I was getting ready to put the questions together, one of my team members helping me said, Bill, you asking Sam about limited insurances. That just happened to me. I was paying last year. She was paying $4,600 a year for insurance, and recently it's gone up to $8,000. Sam, is that because of the tight market?
That's the tight market, and we're losing carriers, and it's not a good situation. It's very difficult. I was looking at it last night, and for one particular risk, I was down to like 3 companies, and that was it. Or I used to have 9.
So 30%. Is that a general figure that can be thought about? Like, is there typically 30% less or 60% less carriers now, or does that just happen to be in that case?
I hadn't looked at it percentage wise, Bill, but that sounds about right. Yes,
wow.
We were losing them right and left here in the last month, 2 months.
We would talk about the flood insurance. And
yes.
That's another thing that's been hard to deal with sometimes. What's happened recently? Can you let our audience know?
The realtors, all my realtor friends, were very excited because we were going to, the federal government was going to change the flood maps. And we waited and they kept postponing it. And they finally came up with it, and they changed the base flood maps, changing zones from a X zone to an A zone, or from an A zone to an X zone. And the V zone was the higher one. The A was the middle of the road, and then the X or B or C was a preferred rate, lesser number.
And Sam, those things were always on top of everybody's mind. It was always a topic of conversation.
Absolutely. And we were anticipating those map changes. They came, and they were in place, I want to say January of 21. And then October of 21, the federal government came up with a new rating. We call it a rating engine or rating formula.
How did they do that, Sam? Can you tell us a little bit how they did that? Who was involved in that?
FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program came up with the new rating engine and said, this is how we're going to rate the policies. And when they did, they put less emphasis on an elevation certificate, because we've all been running around since the early 70s going, okay, I need an elevation certificate, Is it good, bad, high, low, indifferent, whatever? And that really affected the rate. Well, as of October of 21, it doesn't have as much emphasis, if any at all. And I can write a flood policy today and not even have an elevation certificate. So it's not as necessary as it once was. And their rates changed. Some rates went down, some rates went up with this new rating mechanism. It's easier to rate. It's not as complicated. It's not as complicated to the consumer. It's not as complicated to anybody. But the pricing is a little bit different.
Did it make the carriers more comfortable coming into our shorelines and writing insurance? Did that help that a little bit?
As FEMA raised the rates, then private flood insurance has come in the last 2 years. Private flood is investors that will write flood insurance, and as long as it gets up above about $600, they can compete or play in the game. But if it's a $400, $500, $600 premium, then FEMA is probably your best bet. You just stay right there. FEMA is backed by the federal government. Private flood is not backed by anybody. It's just the investors, and it's more risky, but the premiums can be less. It can be a savings. Yesterday, I had a client come in. She had a $5,000 bill from FEMA, and the private flood was $1,500.
That's why having somebody locally is always good.
Companies that are like in San Antonio, they don't understand flood in the lowcountry.
We can't have a conversation about insurance without talking about Hugo, right? Hurricane Hugo.
Yes, sir.
And you and I both lived through it, and we know firsthand what happens in a hurricane. What was your biggest takeaway? And how did your agency, and back then it was smaller, 89, your agency was a bit smaller, right?
Yes, sir, it was. I was born and raised on Sullivan's Island. I had never seen a storm surge like we had on Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, and on further up to the north. Kiowa and Seabrook didn't get us hit as bad by the storm surge, but the storm surge was the thing that shocked me the most. And I remember telling everybody to buy as much wind as you can and make sure you got all the flood insurance that you can buy. The flood insurance through FEMA is limited to $250,000. So the private flood will go higher than the $250,000. So if you've got $1 million house on Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, Kiowa, whatever, and you want more than $250,000, you can get private flood that'll go above that, or you can talk to your agent about excess flood. to go above 250,000. But remember, 250,000, and there was a lot of people shocked by that limit and the limit on the contents. Some people didn't have contents for flood, and they thought they had it because it was on the homeowners. So there's two separate policies. Flood is never covered by a homeowner's policy. But that storm was very, very bad. Everybody needs to make sure that they have their insurance in place, make sure they have the wind in place, make sure they have the flood in place.
We have, as you know, we have a lot of new neighbors from up north now. Here, when these new neighbors are moving down here, they got to have some anxiety about hurricanes. Can you tell them something that will put them at ease in a sense of what they need to do when they buy their new home?
When you live on the coast, Bill, insurance becomes more of a bigger line item on your closing statement or a line item in your family budget. And you have to pay attention to it. There's multiple policies. So you need someone that you choose to educate you and help you with that purchase process, but also to try and help eliminate some of the large out-of-pocket expenses that you wouldn't incur in Greenville or Columbia or up in the Northeast or out west. You might you have higher deductibles, and those deductibles are out of pocket. That's money that you're on the hook for.
Are there things that they can implement within the structure of their home that would reduce their exposure on that line item, that would maybe reduce it? And if so, what would that be?
There are lots of things. There's a new thing that we have, or been around a couple of years, is a wind mitigation form. If you have a house that has certain things, a few of them would be hurricane clips, the secondary water barrier that goes underneath the shingles. It's a membrane. How is a gable roof versus a hip roof? How is the roof nailed down? Is it a metal roof? Is it a shingle roof? All those things come into play to help reduce your costs. You get what they call wind mitigation credits. You have to fill it out, and it has to be verified by a contractor, but all of your insurance men have those forms and can share that with you and help you with that. Some of the older houses don't qualify. You could fill out the form and spend all that time doing it, and you got an older home built in the 50s or 60s, and it just doesn't have those things. But you can always, when you renovate, you can always put those things in. Alarms, certificates, sprinkler systems, those kind of things. Another one of the big losses is driven by water damage, water leaks. Your washing machine hose breaks. If you've got a water detection device that when the pipe starts to run all the time, it shuts off your water system, that is a big credit also with some carriers. Not all carriers, but with some. And that's an important thing to have because it does a lot of damage to your house.
I think that little bit of information right there in itself should ease people's minds. And of course, you got they can call you whether they got their insurance with you or not. I know you, Sam. You'd spend as much time as they need to educate them,
Hey, Bill, I wanted to share something about the Hugo. The one thing that I remember about Hugo is that we didn't have any ice. There was lines, people were standing in line to get ice. So fresh water, ice, and then we had stuff. We didn't have big cell phones, a lot of them, but we had cell towers and things like that, and all the cell phones went down. But the ice was a big thing that everybody wanted, and we didn't have hot water for a little while. But Hugo was bad. Make sure you get as much insurance as you can. You have to pay attention to it, y'all. It's a lot, again, a line item, big line item in your budget, and you have to pay attention to it. And it's usually always going up. I haven't seen rates go down in a number of years. The cost to rebuild is going up, so the insurance is going up. It'll continue to be a large item, especially for us as we get older and those of us that get on fixed incomes and retire. The insurance is going to be a large part of your budget.
Well, I think because the appreciation of homes has gone up so rapidly in the last 12 months, that's the number one thing people have to do is revisit. Because often we get insurance for whether our cars or house or whatever, and it's on remote control, and you shouldn't do that.
That is true. Most of my portfolio over the past has been insured in that $200 to $225 per square foot to rebuild. And most of my portfolio is underinsured, and we're addressing that as fast as possible because these costs to rebuild have gone so high so quickly. So everybody needs to talk to their insurance man about that.
Sam, you remember the Storm of the Century magazine I put out for the Hugo, documenting it? You remember Bob Sheets? He was the head of the Dr. Sheets was the head of the Hurricane Center in Miami.
I do remember.
So he came into town a couple months afterwards, and I met with him, and I was so proud to show him my magazine. He looked at me after reading the magazine. He was at the Charleston place down there in one of the rooms, and he was looking through the magazine, and he looked at me and he said, "Bill, you saved lives by publishing this." I said, "Dr. Sheets, I'm just a publisher. What do you mean?" He said, "Because when people read the devastation of it, they won't stay for the hurricane. They will evacuate." He says, "That's the hardest thing we do, is trying to get people to take it seriously, because it is serious." Sam, thanks for taking the time and sharing this information. I did save the most important question to the last question. And do you read Mount Pleasant Magazine?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Bill. I've enjoyed the magazine, and I've enjoyed our friendship. And I wish much luck to you, buddy.
I enjoyed years ago doing that article on your daddy. Man. That was a fun article to do. So, but again, Sam, thank you, sir, very much. Schirmer Insurance Group. You guys have been around forever, and you're good at what you do, and you're always trying to do better. And you're down home folk. Thanks, Sam, very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'll see you later.
Thanks for watching Voice for Real Estate, where you meet local experts who provide timely information in every episode. Be sure to subscribe, share, and comment. Find Voice for Real Estate online at voiceforrealestate.com.